Welcome to A Court of Fairies and Fangirls. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is a Sarah J. Maas fan podcast where we are obsessed with her books and can't stop thinking about it or talking about it. So we figured, why not record us thinking and talking about it? So
we're going to break down chapters, go through each book separately, go into character analysis and any thoughts or kind of theories that we have about books, characters, plots, etc.
And maybe play some fun games along the way.
Exactly.
So welcome and enjoy. We received, I think the article came out a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But you spotted the article last night.
Yes, I'm so excited. So as of June 15th, supposedly, they have done at least a first draft or some kind of like write through of ACOTAR.
Woo!
Woohoo! And it's going to be released on Hulu. They haven't released any kind of dates yet, but there has been at least some kind of first draft done. And we are so excited.
I am so excited.
Especially since we just did fan casting like last week. I'm like, listen to our fan cast. Like,
well, it's actually, fan cast is coming out this week.
Oh, okay.
So you're going to hear our fan casts this week.
Yes.
But yes.
But pick our people.
Pick our people. It's so funny. I literally, so Dragon Con, we live in Atlanta. Dragon Con is coming up, which is like the lame younger brother of Comic Con. But even still, I was checking it today. I was like, I swear if Ron D. Moore is on the list.
I'm coming.
Because he comes to these kinds of things all the time because of his work with Battlestar Galactica.
Right.
Because that's always going on in the background of these shows. So I was like, what if he comes to it and he's not on the list? But I was like about to like spontaneously buy tickets to the entire weekend of Dragon Con so that I could go meet Ron D. Moore, who I already love because of Outlander.
Right.
But
we will love him even more after ACOTAR comes out.
It's just like, it's so funny. He went from like doing so right by just like pure nerds.
Right. To
doing so right by like fantasy women, like women obsessed with fantasy.
Yes.
And I'm just like, you just like are so good to all of us.
Yes, we
like,
all love you. Everyone loves
saw
him.
What our needs were and you just jumped right in, sir.
I appreciate you, sir.
Anyway, that's just like really positive, exciting ACOTAR related news.
Yes.
So yay. Okay, so this week we're doing chapters 28 through 32, which I called this because I wasn't quite sure what else to. Farewell, hello, farewell.
Yes.
Like, because
it's perfect.
It's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
So we start off with chapter 28. So this, I put another in my feels summary here.
For
so
sure.
I said, Feyre says goodbye to the spring court, to Tamlin, without revealing her true feelings. She returns to her family in the human world, sad and empty. 28.
I don't like how this chapter starts. Not so much in that Farrah's leaving. It's that I just find it interesting when people say that they don't like goodbyes.
Ugh.
I was like, get over yourself. Who actually likes to say goodbye to somebody?
Right.
Like, as if you're never going to see them again.
No one.
So I hate it when people are like, oh, well, I don't do goodbyes. Or I'm not like a goodbye person. I don't like goodbyes. Yet nobody likes goodbyes.
Yeah.
Like, unless it's like, oh, we all just like grab coffee and I'm going to see you next week. Like, I'll give you a hug goodbye.
That's
fine.
a different goodbye, though.
That's a different goodbye. But yeah, you're never going to see Alice again, potentially. And you don't want to say goodbye, like give her a great big hug and thank her for everything she's done for you. No, that's just selfish. That's just so like selfish. Not wanting to express your emotions. And I don't appreciate that. So I didn't like how that began.
I wholeheartedly agree. And also on a side note, I love that I hear that coming from you. Because Sarah's not historically like a deeply emotional person.
Correct.
I shouldn't say that. You are an emotional person. You have emotions inside.
I do. I just don't vocalize them very often.
Right. You don't let your actions be led by emotions.
Correct. Yes.
And so I'm surprised to hear that that's an opinion you have, but I love it.
Yes,
because I agree.
I feel rather strongly about that one too.
Good.
Yeah,
I love it. But yeah, I agree. I think it's cowardly.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, maybe you don't want to like say the word goodbye, but maybe like a thank you.
Yeah.
Like there's more ways to say goodbye to somebody without saying those physical words.
Right, for sure.
So, I don't know. Alice has been really good to you. I feel like could have done a little bit more.
I know. And then her goodbye with Lucian is a rather interesting one.
Yeah, he's pissed.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I don't really understand why he's so pissed.
Right.
He kind of like alludes to like, you should have known better. And he says, I thought you were smarter than this.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, if you're going to be pissed, why aren't you pissed with Tamlin who's sending her away?
Right. I didn't get it. And I was like, what? I was like, is that your goodbye? Like, I thought you were smarter than this?
Right.
I was like, smarter than what? And like, why are you so mad that she's leaving? Like, I know you guys are like now buddy and like kind of goofy friends, but I was like, I feel like it's a weird reaction to her leaving.
I agree.
So
I don't like that.
No.
And then it's just a lot of I don't like this.
I know. That's what I said. I don't like how this chapter started. It's just like these weird. It's just weird.
Yeah. And then next up is Tamlin's goodbye.
Yes.
And she gives him all of her paintings.
But also, those are the last words she says to him. You can have my paintings.
Wait, is that literally the last word?
She said, they're yours. Like, my paintings, they're yours. That's the last thing she says to Tamlin. I was like, what? That
is literally the last thing she says.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Those are your last words to the man that you are so in love with. What?
Those are dumb last words.
Yes. My paintings, they're yours. What? No.
In my head, I thought she said something else.
And that's what I thought too. But then I was like rereading it and I was like, no. This is what she says. That's your goodbye. That's literally like what I would count as your goodbye because that's the last thing you said to him.
Oh my God.
Dumb. It's the worst. It's so stupid.
It really is.
This is why I'm not a fan of the beginning of this chapter.
Because I'm also thinking like, is there a physical way that she has said goodbye after saying that? But it's like.
Not really because she just gets into the carriage.
It says he kissed me and pulled away too quickly. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't seem like it's a really good thing.
No.
She's on the brink of tears, and she just turns and gets into the carriage.
Yeah.
That's so lame.
I know.
Well, and then specifically, Tamlin says, I love you.
Right.
And she goes, I should say it. I should say those words, but they got stuck in my throat. Mm-hmm. And her excuse just feels like malarkey. Because it's like, really because of what he had to face, because he might not find me again despite his promise. Like, you think saying those words would, like, make his life harder?
No. Like yeah, obviously it's going to be hard because you know the love is reciprocated.
Right.
But it also, like, fulfills you because you know your love is reciprocated.
And you have something to fight for.
And you'll both miss each other as much. Yeah.
Yeah,
he was immortal and I would grow old and die, and maybe he meant it now, but perhaps last night hadn't been as altering for him as it was for me, and I didn't want to be a burden to him because I was just all of it. I was just like, what?
I put ugh in like all caps next to this because I'm just like, this like rhetoric she has in her head. I'm like, no.
I'm like, you're totally off your rocker. Like, she doesn't even look back. Like, as they leave. I was like, really, Farrah? Really? This is your supposed home that you've claimed, and that's the worst. This is the worst goodbye.
If my husband leaves for work without giving me a kiss goodbye, I lose my shit.
Yeah. I want to say goodbye every time because you never know.
Every time.
You never know.
Every time. Richard laughs at me all the time because I'll hear the door open, and I'm like, goodbye.
Yeah. And
he's like, I'll be back in 30 seconds. Like, he's just running to his car or something. And I'm like, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, how do I not know that? Because he's not a morning person.
Right.
He doesn't speak well in the mornings. So I'm like, how do I know you're not just tired and going to your car and going to work?
Right.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you're coming back in for 2 more minutes. Anyway, I'll say it like 5 times in a morning if he keeps going in and out. And I'm like, I'm going to say it every time.
Yeah.
But so it's like,
I'd rather
not say anything. Anything. It doesn't have to be those exact 3 words.
No, but just something.
Something. Anyway.
Yeah.
Deeply bothers me, too. So she's in the carriage, and the magic puts her to sleep. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't really, like, experience the carriage ride, and she just kind of wakes up.
Yeah.
She's at this big fancy house, and it turns out this is the house that Tamlin essentially set her family up in.
Yes. Before we go into that, I did want to point out, how is it that the one time Farrah decides not to push back is the time that she's being forced to leave? Like, this girl that literally questions everything and, like, won't do what anybody says.
Yeah.
I was like, you just so willingly submit to leaving.
Yeah.
Even though it's your home, you're in love with this guy.
That's probably part of the reason why Lucian is pissed with her, too.
Yeah. It's like,
he's like, I thought you were a fighter.
Yeah. I just needed to point that out.
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah. But anyway, so she arrives at this monstrous mansion.
Right.
And it's like, wow, like, she really sees now, like, what Tamlin did for her family. And it's just, it's crazy because they, you know, her sisters are out there, like, greeting her, and, like, they don't recognize her at first.
Which is weird to me.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just because, like you said last week about how she had filled out and was, like, starting to, you know, feel more womanly. So it's like, maybe they just, like...
And they probably weren't expecting her either.
Oh, that's true, too.
So, because, I mean, back then you probably would have assumed you'd have gotten a letter, like... and we learned because they thought she was with, like, her, like long-lost aunt or something, and, like, taking care of her, and she supposedly just now died, which is, like, why Feyre came back, but there's been no letters, so... I can see why they're surprised.
Also, Elaine at one point says, didn't you get our letters?
Yeah.
And I'm like... She can't read. Like, even if she did, she can't. Why are you sending her letters?
You're a terrible sister for not even, like, considering that you wrote a letter to your sister that can't read.
Right?
How terrible are you?
Terrible. Like, deeply insensitive about that. Because either you didn't care or you didn't remember.
Probably both. Probably the remembering part. And I'm like, do you know how much Feyre did for you and you couldn't even remember that she can't read? Or take it upon yourself to teach her.
Right.
Like, you guys are stuck in this little shack.
That's
whatever.
a whole
other tangent.
But in a weird way, I like being reunited with her sisters again.
It's interesting, yeah.
Yes.
But also, it makes me appreciate Tamlin even more so because just of the detail that he put into taking care of them.
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden those ships that were magically lost at sea like 8 years ago, all of a sudden are found.
Right.
And I was like, for him to even like remember that detail of how her father lost his wealth and like those ships just magically come back and now all this wealth is like, it makes sense why he has it. It's not just like, oh, like random money was just bestowed on you. It's like, no, like your investment paid off, like you made the right decision, like just like boosting his ego.
But a stranger also gave him money and he invested it.
Yeah, but it's like, but also his own investment like kind of like came around, and I was just like, the fact that he made this man feel like a man again.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just so thoughtful.
That is so thoughtful.
Like, Tamlin's awesome.
One of the things that I appreciate about this is Feyre noticing Nesta, and just this way she described Nesta was like just so intense. I just like forget how intense Nesta is.
I know.
And so did Feyre. She says, I'd forgotten how cunning her eyes were, how cold. She'd been made differently from something harder and stronger than bone and blood. She was as different from the humans around us as I had become. And I'm just like, girl, like what? I don't know. There's just like, there's something.
It's just odd.
Extra.
She's a very unique character.
Yes.
And I don't know. But also like to that point, like when she like first like sees the, you know, the people coming out to greet her, like the carriage people and all of them, she's like, they were so human. And I was like, hun, you're a human. Like,
yeah, but okay. I think I've mentioned this before.
Yeah.
When you're in a different place and you're so immersed in it,
right,
what was normal to you starts to feel odd.
Right.
So when I lived in Australia, all I heard ever were Australian accents.
Right.
And I remember I was at church one weekend and there was this outside pastor who was visiting who was from America. And I was just so hung up. I was like, something doesn't sound, he sounds weird. Like, why? And it's because he had an American accent. And I was so used to hearing Australian accents after living there for so long that it was just wigging me out hearing a random person with an American accent.
Yeah.
So it's like, that stuff just happens sometimes where it's like, if you're so immersed in another culture, what was once normal to you, you're like, this is weird.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah.
In a way.
I get it. Yeah.
And then also, just one more thing about Nesta is she notices that she took her advice and did not marry the Tomas guy. Which I'm like, maybe she does care a little bit about what you have to say.
Yeah. And I think the final thing, at least for me in this chapter, was that she's remembering the Suriel's words.
Yes.
And she's questioning, you know, whether she made a horrible decision in coming back to, like, the mortal realm and leaving Tamlin. And I'm just like, yeah, that's what I'd be thinking, too. You left this guy without saying I love you, without kissing him goodbye. Like,
right.
All these things. Yeah, you should be questioning it. It's like the Suriel told you that for a reason. And, like, you trusted it for a reason. So.
Yeah. Yep. She says it's only command.
I know. And you didn't listen. See, again, you push back on everything else except the one thing you actually want. I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get you, Farrah. I don't get you.
No sense.
No.
So, chapter 29, another shorter chapter, and my summary is also short. I put, Farrah adjusts to life back in the human world and pays a visit to their old home. Real quick, first off the bat, she puts, inventing stories about my time with Aunt Ripley required minimal effort. I read to her daily. I'm not trying to pull this out. She can't read. Why are we continuing to bring this up?
I didn't even, I read it when I
Farrah,
read the book.
That's
but,
a terrible lie.
But clearly, like, Elaine doesn't even question it. Like, nobody questions it because they were writing her letters thinking she could read. I didn't even catch that. That's hilarious that she said that. Oh, my
She's saying, I read to her daily. What?
No, you can't read, Farrah. Oh, my gosh. I didn't even pick up on that. That's hilarious.
Right?
But her family's acting, like, so interesting. Like, Elaine is so full of life and love, which not surprising. Like, let's be honest. Her dad is a total surprise. He's just, like, so energized. He's walking without a limp. He seems like a man again. Like, he's just, like, proud and happy. But Nesta is different, like, which is interesting. Because it's, like, you had thought that she would be just basking in the glory of having money and, like, servants and, like, being able to command who she wants. Like, that's what I expected of Nesta. But she's, like, she's so quiet. She stares at everything like she's trying to figure out what's going on. Like, it was just, like, interesting how
she was
Nesta
so
was behaving.
combative before.
Right, and she's just, like, quiet and just, like, watching. And it's like, what?
Right.
Like, I know everything changed because, like, yeah, you have money. But, like, why are you acting this way, not the way you were before?
What is going on in that head?
Right. It's very, I was very surprised by, like, how she was acting.
Well, and I think this is partly why Elaine confides in Farrah that Nesta went to see her.
Which I was like, shut the front door. Like, of all the people, like, and I remember we literally had this conversation in one of our episodes where it's like, when the Puka arrived, it was like, Elaine would obviously never show up. Nesta and Farrah hated each other, so she wouldn't show up. Maybe her dad, but her dad, not really. Like, so Nesta, we totally said, there's no way she would ever try to come visit. And look at us, wrong. We were proved wrong.
We were. And what's so funny is, I'll be honest, when we were talking about that, I forgot.
I totally forgot that she came to visit.
Yeah.
Or tried to visit.
Tried to visit.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, God, of all the people. It was the big sister.
I know. It was just so interesting.
Yeah. And I love also, out of this conversation with Elaine, she talks about how Farrah just looks so different. Yeah. And sounds so different.
And she's like, it was the magic. Like, it rubbed off on me.
I know. Like, but here's the thing. I don't think it was just the magic.
No, it for sure was not.
Like, I think there's something really beautiful about, like, becoming, right? And when a person is becoming themselves and becoming confident and comfortable and understanding, like, they're deserving of love, like, there's something so beautiful about that, and it just lifts a person. Yeah. Like, when they say, like, people are, like, beautiful inside or out, or, like, ugly on the inside, like, when we say those things, like, it actually, I feel like someone's inner beauty in a way does reflect on the outside.
It does. It totally radiates, especially like somebody that's newly in love.
Yes.
They just have like that glow, almost like a pregnancy glow, as you will. Like, they have that glow to them. So I'm sure that's exactly what Elaine's seeing. Yeah. And Elaine even asked her, like, was there a boy? She's like, no, I just had a lot of like rest at like at Aunt whatever's house. I was like, oh, good try.
Good try.
But like Elaine doesn't even question it. She's just like, oh, okay. I'm like, she just seems so airheaded to me.
She
like,
does.
In the nicest way possible. If that could be a compliment to her, like.
But then Feyre describes right after that just about how Elaine is blossoming. Yeah. So it says, like, she'd come alive here. Her joy was infectious. There wasn't a servant or gardener who didn't smile at her. And even the brusque head cook found excuses to bring her plates of cookies and tarts at various points in the day. I marveled at it, actually, that those years of poverty hadn't stripped away that light from Elaine. Perhaps buried it a bit, but she was generous, loving, and kind. A woman I found myself proud to know, to call sister.
Yeah.
I think that's so sweet.
It's such a sweet description of Elaine. And it's like, she's such a great person, but I feel like she's oblivious because it's like, you didn't know Farrah didn't read, like, you don't ask deeper questions, like, just like obvious things that you should know about your sister. But like, I'm happy that Elaine is becoming herself as well. Yeah, like, she's clearly thriving in this environment, right? So yes, I'm happy about that.
Part of me also thinks, though, is like, I feel like you need different types of people in this world,
for sure,
and I feel like Elaine is not perfect. Elaine has her flaws. I wish Elaine cared more about the struggles that her family is facing and going on. But, I mean, you need people like that, too.
Yeah, like, that are just lights and hope and everything. Yeah,
because I feel like they help the people who are focused on the problems. And, and I don't know, I don't think that I'm this person. Like, I don't connect to Elaine in that way. But I appreciate deeply the people who are.
I totally do too. Yeah.
Even if they can be frustrating at times.
Yep. So she goes to revisit the cottage that. Oh yeah. Or hovel, whatever you want to call it. I was going to say depending on whose perspective it is. But so she goes to revisit, and it's just interesting the perspective that she takes when she goes there, and you know that she had lived there the past few years. In reference to Elaine. She had looked at the cottage with hope, and I had looked at it with nothing but hatred, and I knew which one of us had been stronger. And I was like, that's when I was like, oh, I really like Elaine. And I like Farrah's, like, thought about Elaine. And I was just like, oh, that's such a, like, a good way to, like, think about it. Yeah. Just the fact that she could look at a cottage with hope. Yeah. Versus I looked at it with hatred, and that, like, makes her stronger. I was
I would say that I think that, in a way, when we talk about, like, bias in a book based off of the narrative, I think Farrah's downplaying her own strength in a way because I think it's so easy for us to look at other people and point out how strong they were. Yeah. Or the good things about them, and it's so much harder to notice it in ourselves. Right. And so I feel like obviously this is told from Farrah's perspective. So I think she's pointing out, and rightly so, the strength and bravery of her sister. But I'm also like, part of me is like, Farrah, you don't have to, like, downplay yourself. Right. Because how do you measure who was stronger?
But, like, I mean, I think Farrah knows she was physically stronger than Elaine, but I think mentally, I mean, we think about where she started at. She was winter inside and out. Like, she was so sad, so depressed, so lost. And Elaine was never like that. Yeah. So it's like, I think she's talking about it in that way. Which, in that case, I do think Elaine was stronger. Yeah. Like, mentally.
A mental and emotional strength.
Yeah. So.
That makes sense.
I see what she's saying.
Yeah. It's a really, like, poignant way to end the chapter. Yeah. And then on to chapter 30. Do you have anything else in 29?
Number 29, no.
All right. I made my summary very short and sweet. Okay. It's an in my feels sticker. Yeah. And I just put Feyre and Nesta reconnect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This chapter. Mm-hmm. I think at one point what did I put? I put, how many times can my heart break? Like, it just got me in many, many ways. Mm-hmm. What did you notice about this chapter?
Well, just I liked how it starts. So she runs into Isaac, you know, the guy that she had, like, tumbled in the hay with or whatever, on her way back, and she describes him as human, so human. She just feels nothing but happiness for him and his new wife. So to me, it's like she has clearly, like, she can tell it's over. Like, she is in love with Tamlin. Like, she has moved on. Like, it's nice because she wishes them nothing but the best, but you can clearly see, like, her heart has changed. She's grown, like, and it's nice to, like, see that. Yeah. But she's constantly thinking about, like, what's going back on in Prythian, and even though, like, a ball is being held in her honor, like, because Elaine and her dad are kind of, like, throwing her a ball, but, like, all her thoughts are just back on Prithian.
Yeah.
And she's basically just, like, trying to kill time during the day, but she can't imagine what to do with, like, the rest of her time, because she was like, oh, like, I can do, you know, the plants with Elaine for a few hours, but it's like, what am I supposed to do forever, basically?
Right.
So, yeah, and then it's everything with Nesta, which is a lot.
It's so much. Here's the thing. When we talked about Nesta at the front of this book, I had very strong feelings about her.
Yes.
Especially, even so, the first time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but we did our breakdown of the Archeron sisters, where we dived into these characters even more fully, like, through the course of the series. And reading this chapter just actually, like, I forgot the emotion in this chapter for Nesta.
I was literally thinking the same thing. I was like, wow, maybe I was a little bit harsh on Nesta. Like, just reading this chapter,
Right.
I was like, I forgot that she had, like, not redemption, but, like, she was so observant and she cared so much about Farah in this chapter. And I was like, how did I forget this? Was all of her terribleness just totally overshadowing, like, the one good moment I felt like I had with her?
I know. Part of me was like, oh, shame on us a little bit.
I know. I feel a little bad. All those listeners that, like, commented and were like, dang, you guys were harsh on Nesta. We were a little harsh after reading this chapter.
I
was
think
like,
so.
a
Like,
little bit.
I think we missed mentioning this side of Nesta.
Yes,
maybe
I agree.
Is the way to put it.
I still have, like, dislike towards her, but, like, this was like, oh, wow, like, she cares. She is a good person.
Yeah.
There is
one
redemption.
Of those things where I still agree with the things we said, but I think we did her a disservice by not mentioning this side.
I agree. Listeners, you'd be proud of us.
Their growth
from
Here's
us.
The thing, though, but even, like, reading books, I think it's so interesting, like, what you take on each read. Because I used to think it was weird when people would read books over and over and over.
Yeah.
But, like, something like this, it's like certain things stick out in your mind different times you read it.
For sure.
And for me, this time it was this chapter stuck out to me so differently.
It's never stuck out like this before. And I think it's because we were so harsh before and we've talked so much about Nesta in prior episodes that I was like, I read this and I was like, wait, this is nothing like what I was thinking, talking about. And it, like, really stood out.
Yes.
So I'm glad it did for you too.
Yeah. I was like, do we need to do, like, a redo? Like,
no.
Like well, not like a full redo, but like a follow-up of that breakdown. But anyway, okay. So, like, key things with Nesta, this conversation. So, first off, we find out that the trick did not work on her.
Well, even...
Or the glamour.
So, right before that, even, Nesta's being, like, a little snippy with Farah, and she says, I think your home is somewhere very far away. And I was like, what an odd thing to say. Because, like... Yep. But then she goes into, like, that the glamour didn't work, and I was like, oh, well, I get you. Right, you said that now.
Well, and I love what Farah says. She goes, I'd never heard of a glamour not working, but Nesta's mind was so entirely her own. She had put up such strong walls of steel and iron and ash wood that even a High Lord's magic couldn't pierce them. And I'm like, you are so fierce.
Yes.
So fierce. Oh, and it's like, it works against you so hard in some ways.
I know.
But in other ways, I'm just like, yes.
I know. I was, like, so impressed. It's like, what? A High Lord's glamour didn't work on you.
Yeah.
Like, a human. I'm like, how? I can't even imagine how strong your freaking mind must be that, like, a fairy can't glamour a human.
Right. It's like, that should be child's play.
Right. It's like impossible. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. A friend of mine is reading this series for the first time, and she's been texting me along the way. And at one point, she put that she loves Nesta. And I was reading this moment, I was like, yeah, I see that. I see why. I see why.
And also, like, she had saved a piece of Farah's painting from the house as, like, it's sentimental. I don't know if she necessarily saved it sentimentally because that was, like, Farah had painted that part.
It's like a reminder of her.
But it's a reminder of her. But it was also, like, I thought it was, like, where the claw marks were.
Yes.
Like, so, like, for me, I was like, were you saving it because it was a reminder of Farah, or was it because a reminder of, like, what actually happened?
Well,
like,
I think it's about what actually happened to Farah.
I see. I wasn't sure if it was, like, happened to Farah or what happened to them, like, in general. Like,
well, because I think, and, like, we break this down a little bit more, but I don't think Nesta was pissed about her family being like glamored and things changing. I don't think that was the true issue of it, because she says multiple times. Where is it? She says. So she says multiple times it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what she keeps saying.
That's true, yeah.
And to me, that feels like it wasn't right that he took you. It wasn't right that he tried to make us forget what happened to you. That's what wasn't right in that situation. Because them getting money is fine.
Right.
Like, those kinds of things, she's not worried about not being right.
Right.
It's about specifically what happened to Feyre.
Gotcha.
At least that's what I'm taking from it.
Yeah, no, and I could see that. I just wasn't like 100% sure, because I was like, did you take it because of the claw marks that you'd remember like what happened, or because like Feyre painted this and the claw marks? It's probably both. Probably both.
But we find out she hired the mercenary from town.
The one that she was like petrified that Feyre went to talk to.
I don't look at this sop I drew. I just like, because Feyre goes, "You did that for me?"
Yeah.
I was like,
I was literally in shock. I was like, Nesta.
I was crying.
Nesta literally went all the way to the wall. Like, that's like a 2 or 3 day trip. She went all the way to the wall and was looking for 2 days for the freaking hole in the wall. And she couldn't find it. And then she turned around. I was like, what? Who is this girl?
Who is she?
I was like, Nesta, where have you been for the past 8 years? Like,
yes.
Come on. I thought she hated Feyre. I was shocked. I was so shocked.
She goes, "What happened to Thomas Mandray?"
Yeah.
And I'm just, oh God, it hits me. Nesta goes, "I realized he wouldn't have gone with me to save you from Prythian."
Yes.
I'm like, stop.
I know. I was like, you care. You genuinely care. I know. I was shocked when she said that. I was like, man.
That's just like such like fierce big sister energy that it just like
that's the first time
right inside.
I know. I feel like that's the first time she is truly big sister.
Yes.
Like Mama Bear, like, oh no, like I can't be with a man that doesn't care about my sister.
Yes.
So yeah, that was amazing. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, I said softly. Woman who couldn't stomach the sycophants who now surrounded her, who had never spent a day in the forest but had gone into wolf territory, who had shrouded the loss of our mother, then our downfall, in icy rage and bitterness, because the anger had been a lifeline, the cruelty a release. But she had cared. Beneath it, she had cared, and perhaps loved more fiercely than you or I could comprehend, more deeply and loyally. Tomas never deserved you anyway, I said softly. I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is probably the one moment the two of them have ever shared where it's like they genuinely cared about each other, like, or that you see that they care. Like, she's clearly cared about her the whole time, even though she never even made Feyre aware of that. But I'm like, how could you be someone's sister and not let them know how much you care? Like, that kills me. I'm like,
everybody's different.
I know, but just, I loved that paragraph. Like, Feyre is so reflective about like who her sister truly is, and it's like I think she's like understanding Nesta on like a whole new level. So I loved that whole paragraph. Yeah.
Well, and just like, again, in the spirit of connection, Nesta asks her to tell me everything.
Yep.
And she does. And then it says, "And when I finished my story, Nesta merely stared at me for a long while before asking me to teach her how to paint."
Yeah.
And there's just something so sweet about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that's Nesta reaching out.
I know, because I was like, of all the things, I was like, that's never what I would have anticipated her like asking to do or like wanting to do with Feyre. But it's like she's trying to connect.
Yes.
And I respect that. I respect that a lot.
And I can imagine, like, you know, Nesta, because she mentions like going back to the cottage at times to remember. Mm-hmm. And we know that there were paintings all over that cottage.
Right.
So it's like, I wonder if she would like go there. Like, I'm just imagining like her going there and just like sitting there and staring at everything Feyre painted and trying to remember Feyre and like, like that's what and when she finally asked her to teach her how to paint, like that's what I'm picturing. Like, I'm picturing her probably having experienced something like that.
Yeah.
And now she's like, I want to connect with her in this way.
Yeah.
It's just so...
It's really sweet. Like, again, I don't take back what I said about Nessa, but I definitely feel like this needed to be discussed.
Yes.
Like, her redemption, her, like, good side, like, truly loving Feyre side.
Yes.
So.
I just... Ugh.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Okay, yeah. So, 2 other conversation points with Nesta that really stuck out to me. So Elaine and their dad are kind of like getting ready for this ball. And Nesta makes a point. She said, there are days when I want to ask him if he remembers the years he almost let us starve to death. And Feyre goes, you spent every copper I could get too. And then this is the thing that Nesta said that kind of stuck with me. She said, I knew you could always get more. And if you couldn't, then I wanted to see if he would even try to do it himself instead of carving those bits of wood. If he would actually go out and fight for us. I couldn't take care of us, not the way you did. I hated you for that, but I hated him more. I still do. And it's just like that's what was behind Nesta's original energy. Like, hate for her father. And she says that she hated Feyre, but it's more like she hated herself, that she could not provide in the same way Feyre could. I feel like it's like
a jealousy, hatred kind of thing.
So that really, I put a little like heartbreak emoji next to that.
Is. Like, it's so sad that it's like you were just wanting Feyre to fail so that your dad, just to see if he would even try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and continuing on talking about her father, this is the second thing I just wanted to point out that I thought was interesting. Because she's also pissed about how her father handled their mother's death.
Right.
Because she says, like, he let her waste away. And Feyre goes, he loved her. He grieved for her. And then Nesta goes, he let her die. You would have gone to the ends of the earth to save your high lord. And it's just like, yes, but also Feyre just left.
I know, that's what I was thinking. I was like, yes, in my head, I'm like, yes, she would, because that's who she is. But then I was like, but she just left the guy. I was like, she didn't even try. That was my thing. Like, she didn't even try to stay behind. And I'm sure, like, when Nesta says that to Feyre, she's like, oh my gosh, like, what have I done? Like, yes, I am that person that would fight to the death for the one I love.
Because Nesta's been very cold in the past, but she's very observant.
She's so observant, yeah.
She's very sharp. And so it's like, if she's calling that out in Feyre,
right,
because of just who Feyre is, because that's what Feyre did for her family.
Right.
It's what Feyre did for them. So it's like, you would go to the ends of the earth to save him.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what you did for us. And then it's like, but you didn't!
But you didn't, Feyre!
And in a way, we know, because this was part of this week's reading.
Right.
That definitely probably spurs the next.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's what segues into the next chapter, actually.
Yes. So, summary for chapter 31. I put, after discovering Claire's fate, Feyre is determined to return to Prythian to help Tamlin and save her family from the Blight. Her sisters send her off, and she searches for the hole in the wall, ultimately finding it along with a decimated spring court.
Yeah.
Chapter 31.
And so, basically, what we were saying is, you know, that it segues in, and Feyre is thinking about what Nesta said to her and realizes that she's right. She so desperately wanted to just have, like, an easy, cush life when she was there, that she left Tamlin and didn't fight to stay. She didn't tell him she loved him. She didn't do what she could have. Yeah. So it's like Nesta really, like, hit home with, like, Feyre's thoughts. And, like, good. She should have. But I'm like, how did you not realize this before you left? Yeah.
This is why we need fierce lady friendships who will help call you out on your bullshit.
Yes, we do.
And that is what Nesta did for her. And in a roundabout way.
Right. But I'm, like, glad she realizes it. And it's nice that it was Nesta that, like, brought this to her attention. You know, just, like, there is good in her. Like, it's a good side. It's a good thing, I think.
Well, and then so she's thinking on this while they're all at dinner, basically. I think it's dinner.
Yeah.
And her father brings up that essentially the entire Better family burned in their house. Like, the house burned down. And so that land is up for sale.
And I saw that. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Feyre's like,
excuse me, what?
Who? So, and then they didn't find Claire's body either.
No.
So it's like, where's Claire?
Oh my gosh. And, I mean, I'm hearing this, like, obviously Feyre is freaking out just the same way as we are reading this. And it's like, that's the name that she gave to Rhys. Like, she said Claire Better. And this girl's family has been, like, her whole house and her whole family burned to the ground, and she's gone. And it's like, there's no way that's a coincidence that, like, a week before or, like, days before you gave this name, and then this family is burned to the ground and the girls disappeared. No way. It's just not possible. Nope. So it's like, it has to be has to be them. And but that also means that like fairies are crossing the wall, like,
yep,
and like coming in. And so it's like, does that mean the blight's getting stronger? Like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm. And that's very disturbing. And this is really like, I think it's really interesting. Feyre just like, it's like a switch is flipped.
Yeah.
She goes, you must listen very carefully. And then that she just launches into what they need to do.
Right.
Because she is leaving.
I feel
and
like
they're in danger.
This is like her mode. Like she is protector mode. Like
yep.
she likes to like take care of people, protect people, like, and like she didn't have a reason. Like I feel like when she left, it was just like she was trying to be this person that she wasn't. But like this is where she thrives. Is when it's like you trigger her and she's like, bam, this is what I do. Like I need to do this, this, and this. I'm going to tell you to do this. Like I'm leaving. I'm packing a bag. I'm going to defend people.
Yep.
But it's like the past like few weeks when she's like fallen in love with Tamlin and just like been happy-go-lucky, like that's who she is, like who she wants to be, but it's not who she is. Like this is who she is. That's why she was like so quick to act.
She's a fighter.
She is. As soon as it was triggered, it's like bam, like this is what we're doing.
Yeah, it's so funny because I'm thinking back to when Lucien and Tamlin asked her about like what her hobbies were,
right?
And like painting is definitely a hobby for her, but it's like her life is not meant to be just painting.
No, not at all.
Like it is fight. It is, and it doesn't have to be like war, but like she needs to like feel useful. She needs to feel like she's protecting something. Like that's when she's most herself.
Right.
And I think it's exactly what you said of, yes, we saw her relaxing, which is good. We saw her opening up. We saw her in some ways feeling more of herself.
Yeah.
But I think in that way, she lost that part of herself a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's why she left. Like she lost that part of no, I'm going to stay, I'm going to protect.
Yeah.
Like she let that be compromised, and that's why she left in the first place.
Right. But this has definitely triggered it back.
We're back. The switch has been flipped and she's ready to go. And so I think something to point out, it says, my father and Elaine began blinking as if clearing some fog from their minds. So just by like talking about this, now that glamour's gone and they're starting to remember what's going on. And she explains about the better. She explains about Tamlin and the blight. And I love that Nesta is just like, it says Nesta followed me up into the hall and up the stairs. Like Nesta's like, I'm going to help you. We're going to do this.
Well, and even when they were having the conversation, like in front of her dad and sister, she like shushes them. She's like, no, like hand up, like shut up. Like, no, don't talk. Like she's talking.
Yes. And I put in all caps, just like sob next to this because Nesta goes, we don't need you here, Feyre. Do not look back. And then Nesta goes, Father once told you to never come back, and I'm telling you now, we can take care of ourselves. And then Feyre thinks, once I might have thought it was an insult, but now I understood. Understood what a gift she was offering me. Yeah. It's just like,
yeah. And I'm like,
it's just like full circle really in a way.
I'm like, you guys needed to have way more moments like this in your past, and maybe you would have been closer. But, yeah, and like Feyre, warns them that like iron's useless.
Yeah.
That fairies can lie. Which, again, I know we talked about that she would never have the chance to tell people this. Yes, she clearly does. Whatever. And then the ash is really the only thing that can kill him. And she's like, buy land, like a whole freaking garden full. Like, spend all my money on ash trees if you need to. Like, hire guards. Like, all this stuff.
But there's another really sweet moment where she turns to her sister and says, there is a better world, Nesta. There's a better world out there waiting for you to find it. And if I ever get the chance, if things are ever better, safer, I will find you again. Stop.
I know.
It's
really sweet.
It's so sweet. But then Nesta's response is so Nesta. She's like, don't bother. I don't think I'd be particularly fond of fairies.
That cracked me up. I was like, of course you would say that. Of course you would.
And then, but sorry, I'm so obsessed with this Feyre Nesta interaction these last few chapters. She goes, no limits, I thought. There were no limits to what Nesta might do, what she might make of herself once she found a place to call her own. I prayed I would be lucky enough to someday see it.
I know. I was like, where was this in the beginning of the book? Like,
I know.
But I think, like, her being away from Nesta has probably helped the situation a lot.
Yes.
Just because she can actually see her now for who she truly is, because you get so down in the weeds with people that it's like you kind of don't realize stuff about them, but when you step away and like come back, I think I think it was good. Good for their relationship. Good. But yeah, I was so impressed with like how like the thoughts that Farrah was talking about with Nesta. I was like, I like this a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they were just really sweet.
They're so sweet.
So then she packs up and is off.
Well, and also just in terms of like goodbyes, I think it's interesting how the goodbyes shifted from those first goodbyes to now.
Yeah.
Because now we have Nesta telling her to never come back and just to do it, which originally is what her father did. Mm-hmm. Then it says that her father was nowhere in sight.
Right.
Which I think probably upon remembering everything that happened, he's feeling immense shame.
Probably.
In a way. Mm-hmm. That's my guess. And then Elaine threw her arms around her and held her tightly, saying, I remember all of it now. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think Elaine didn't say a word to her.
No, she was cowering.
She was just cowering.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how, like, things have shifted.
Right.
Not just inside of Feyre, but in her relationships with every member of her family.
Yeah.
When she hasn't even been around them up until, like, right now.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Mm-hmm.
And then there's a very sweet moment, again, with Elaine, where Elaine goes, I would have liked to see the continent with you, Feyre.
I know, it was so sweet. I was like, oh.
And Feyre goes, maybe someday. And I hope they do that someday.
I hope. I was like, that's such a sweet sister thing.
It really is. But then you're right. She leaves. And so I mentioned to you my friend who was reading this series. Mm-hmm. She pointed something out, and I have to agree.
Okay.
It's Tamlin goes through all this trouble of knocking her out.
Yeah.
When she goes to Prithian and back.
This out.
How did she find her way through? So, I mean, granted, I don't know if it was like super easily. It did say it took her like a day or two of walking along the wall.
But I was like, that's not that long. Like, and it didn't say she was just like, okay, I'm thinking that I'm looking for this magical hole in the wall.
Right.
So what I would do, this is me, I'd be walking literally right next to it, my hand along the wall the whole time.
Because, that's basically what she said she was doing.
No, they said like
she said tapping the wall every so often.
Tapping the wall. I was like, how do you like? What about the last 27 feet you just passed? Were those just not whole feet? Like, was there no way a hole was in that space? I was like, I don't understand. Like, this is my logical brain working. I was like, how do you know? Like, if it was so obvious, like visibly obvious, people would find it. So I was like, if it's this magical hole, shouldn't you have to feel for it?
Yeah, it just...
This is my logical brain.
It was a little too easy.
Too easy. I was like, 2 days, that's it? That's all it took? I feel like it should take
But
longer.
Also, she's very determined at this point.
Right. I'll give her that. And I was trying to be, like, not too harsh on this, like, part. But yeah, and the fact that I was like, okay, so you enter into the woods, which it could have been a totally different spot that you entered with Tamlin versus where you entered yourself. So... how do you magically just make it back to the spring court, like, with no effort? Like, I was like, when you went out hunting, like...
very minimal effort.
Very minimal effort. You just magically find your... I was like, you don't even have a compass. Like, how did you even know where in the spring court this thing was? Like, you just magically get back there? Yeah. This is, like, probably my harshest criticism for any part in the book. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, there's no way she would find it this easy, but... I was trying to not judge too harshly on this part.
That's fair. I just more or less think it's funny. Yeah. But I also know that you can't mess with a woman who is determined.
It's true. I will give her that.
Maybe that's what it was.
But she makes it to the manor successfully.
Yes.
And
it's just destroyed.
It's destroyed. She sinks to her knees in despair knowing Tamlin is gone. I was like, oh, no.
Sad.
Sad ending to the chapter.
It is. And then we're moving into the last chapter of this reading.
Right.
Which was very long. Mm-hmm. But let me read you my summary.
Okay.
So I said, Feyre runs into Alice, who tells her everything about Amarantha, the curse, and Prithian's fate. Mm-hmm. Feyre's resolve grows, and she asks Alice to take her to Amarantha, under the mountain. And Alice reluctantly agrees. Mm-hmm. So, this was a highly informational chapter.
I was going to say, like, I have, like, it was a long chapter. It was probably, like, 12 or 13 pages compared to, like, the other ones that were 6 or 7. But I actually don't have that many notes. Because I felt like it was just a lot of, like, information.
Yep.
And it doesn't really need, like, to be hashed out or, like, discussed. Right. But, like, we will obviously, like, touch on it.
Well, high level.
On
a very high level, we find out that this blight was a curse.
Right.
from Amarantha. Essentially, Amarantha hated humans.
Right.
She was part of the war where over the slaves, basically, from 500 years ago. And she talks about how her sister fell in love with a human who was just manipulating her sister and murdered her sister, so that fuels her hate. And that war, obviously, she ended up losing, and she came back, and she manipulated the High Lords and took their power, and now she is leader over them all, having taken their power. And she was in love with, or as much as an evil person can be, with Tamlin. Very interested in him, but he refused her. And basically, very, very quick high-level summary, he insults her, says something about, like, he'd rather love a human, and Amarantha's like, okay, cool. Let's see if you can get a human who hates fairies to love you. And that was the curse. Very Beauty and the Beast-esque, right? Gotta find a person who, like, how could someone ever love a beast, right? Like, that whole idea.
A beast and in a mask, too.
And in a mask, yes. So, that's a very high-level summary. Do you think I missed anything?
I don't think so. I think that was a very good high-level overview of, like, the whole combo.
And they find out that she is under the mountain, and she's taken Tamlin because the curse limit is up. And if Feyre had just said, I love you,
she would have broken the curse.
Yes. And it's, again, not trying to keep mentioning this, I just think it's so funny, like, people's reactions as they read these books the first time. She texted me before she even got to this part. And it's in all caps. It was like, I swear to God, Alex, if all she had to do was break the curse is say, I love you, I'm going to lose my shit. And I just, like, I sent the, like, emoji where it's, like, the awkward grin and you're like, like, sorry. Because it's, like, in some ways you're like, that's so easy. It should have been so... it's not, but...
It should have been so easy, but it's like, it's so hard for people to say, I love you, and mean it, and like, blah, 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 I get it. But, like, come on.
I know.
But we do learn, like, a couple other things that aren't just, like, in, like... in regards to that. So, initially when the, like, chapter, like, first starts, like, I was just really impressed again, because, like, Farrah's hunting instincts, like, kick in. She's, like, tracking through the house, and I was like... She's like, I gave myself, like, 2 minutes to just, like, grieve, and then I was up. Like, I was tracking, like, where all the blood was. Like, I was following everything, and I was like, this is her element. Like, you can just clearly see it, but she's like, there's no body. She's like, I kept reminding myself, there's no body. So it's like, I knew that they were taken, basically. So she's, like, believing that they're still alive, like, that they were just taken. So, like, that was impressive.
Yes.
And then, like, Alice, like, is saying that she's basically one of the only people in the house because she's too lowly to be taken, like, with the rest of the court. And I was like, that sucks that you're too lowly, but, like, I'm super happy that you weren't taken.
This is true.
Like, and I'm sure she's super happy, especially because, like, her nephews, like, she has to take care of her nephews and everything. So, like, I was happy about that. Yeah, she explains everything. We learn about Lucian losing his eye, which I thought was, like, an interesting, that's how that happened. And, like, when it was just crazy, like, reading that part, because it's like Lucian went back and, like, Tamlin vomits, like, because he's, like, so, like, distraught over seeing this. I was like, oh my gosh. And, like, that's the reason they go to the masquerade, is Aramantha's, like, supposedly trying to make up for it. So it's like all of that because of, like, Lucian, like, it was just interesting, like, how she used, like, his friend to, like, manipulate him. So
another thought that I had during the whole, like, breakdown of everything is, part of me is like I get it that Tamlin is a sexy High Lord. I get it. But I'm like, Amarantha, why are you so obsessed with him?
Yeah, it's a little weird.
So,
but it's been since she was, like, younger, too.
I mean, but, like, younger in terms of fairy lives. Here's something I'm wondering. Are they mates?
I don't know. And he's just, like, rejecting it?
Yes.
That's a good thought.
That was because I was like,
she is like so obsessed with him.
She's so obsessed with him.
Yeah.
Like, so hardcore obsessed with him.
I'm sure we'll find out. But that's a very, like, very good thought. I like that.
I don't know. That just,
I mean, I don't like that. I don't want Tamlin to be your mate, but, like,
but we've learned, like, just because people are mates doesn't mean, like, they actually like each other or, like, good for each other.
Parents, like,
exactly. So, but part of me is like, why else would she be so obsessed with him?
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. That's a really interesting thought.
So,
And then also, like, it made me, like, so sad to, like, learn about Andres. Like, they touched on, like, how, like, these, like, so Tamlin had, you know, all these sentries that were going out every single day right after this, like, curse was bestowed upon them. And, like, there was only a dozen or so left after, like, 2 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, all these guys, like, sacrificed themselves. And then literally from, like, so year 2 to year 49, they did nothing. They just, like, sat around and, like, waited and hoped. And I was just, I would go crazy if I was one of those people that, like, could.
Yeah. It's like, why are we even waiting? Why don't we just hand ourselves over now?
I know. That's the thing. And it's like, and then all of a sudden he, like, decided. And it's just like, Andres was like, yes, like, I will do this for my people, for, like, my high lord. Like,
what a hero.
I know. I was like, you're willing to sacrifice yourself. Like, so it was just like, I feel like we got a little more perspective into, like, the centuries and, like, Andres. And it just, like, I was like,
well, also a little more perspective of why Lucian was behaving all the different ways he was.
Absolutely, for sure.
And, like, why he was, like, pissed with Feyre at the end.
Yes. But, yeah, it's just, I don't know. But Tamlin, he's just really the best. Like, he literally just put Feyre above himself, like, above his court and above Prithian. Like, I was like, he literally sent her away and chose, like, for the whole freaking, like, fairy world to suffer because he was in love with this girl. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it's romantic, but it's like also, come on, like, she could have, like, maybe, like,
it's so frustrating to me.
I'm like, why didn't you wait till the last day? Why did you send her 3 days prior?
Right.
Obviously because she would have said I love you, we wouldn't have had this dramatic story. But, like, why couldn't they have waited till the last day before he said I love you? And then I wouldn't have been as mad because, like, she had 3 days left. Like, she would have said I love you in that time.
Yeah, it just, like, here's the thing. Like, I appreciate a man who wants to take care of his woman.
Yes.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But, like, you did not ask her. She was in no way informed of what was happening.
Right.
There's still, in my mind, a consent to protection.
Right.
And I feel like they did not appropriately, and granted they couldn't in many ways.
Right, yeah, they couldn't talk about what the actual blight was. Like, they couldn't say a lot of stuff. So, but, I get that.
But, like, could they have even slightly more appropriately conveyed to her the situation?
Right.
And let her choose for herself.
Yeah, because you know she would have chosen to stay and, like, try to fight and, like...
Right.
Try to break the curse. Like, she would have done everything she could have. Whereas you just sent her away and, like, forced everybody's hand in this.
Right. So it's like, yes, it's romantic.
But
the feminist in me is irritated.
Yeah. And I'm also, like, it's one of those things, it's like, how do you choose one person over everyone?
I know.
It's like, putting it into that balance. It's like that weird conversation we had about, like, you know, Tamlin said he would have chosen to fight for the slaves. But it's like, you never know in the situation. And it's like... It's like one of those things. It's like, how do I choose my one? Like, it's like if you ask me, like, would I choose Josh over, like, saving 100,000 lives? It's like obviously I want to choose Josh, but it's like 100,000 people.
Would Josh let you? Like, would he let you choose him over 100,000 people?
No.
Right, and so that's, I'm like, Feyre would not have let him do that.
But I feel like everyone would basically be like, the self-sacrifice. Like, most people would self-sacrifice or say they would be okay with that.
Right.
Like, I feel like for total innocence, like, most people are gonna want to choose, like, save 100,000 lives over me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know. But, like, he clearly chose, like, to protect her over everyone.
Right.
Like,
but it's also, like, in a way, like, she being there could protect everyone.
I know, if he had just given her the time, I'll, like, give her one more day. Like, why did you said I love you first. So, like, generally people reciprocate that if they're feeling the same. So it's like, if you had waited one more day, she could have said it and the whole course would have been broken and everybody would have been free.
Yeah.
So, but
I don't know.
I'm sure there's a reason why, because we've still got, like, I don't know, 20 chapters left or something.
I know.
So.
It's frustrating that it was, like, forced on her in that way. And honestly, we only have, like, closer to, like, 15 chapters left.
Oh, so there you go. Big things are bound to happen, I'm sure.
Big things. But, yeah, but to wrap this all up, basically, she decides that she's going. That to hell with what Tamlin had originally said. She is going to go fight for him and fight for Prithian.
Yes.
And I just think she is so brave.
She's so brave.
She's so brave.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. And Alice is going to take her to Under the Mountain.
Yes, so. Which it's it just stuck out to me that like Amarantha was just like, no, go home. She's like, I'll take you to the wall. There's not to be done now.
Oh, Alice, you mean?
Oh, what did I say?
You said Aramantha. I was like,
my
wait.
Gosh.
I was like, Aramantha didn't talk to her.
It's getting late. I'm tired. No, Alice basically was just like, no, go home. That's what fate dealt. That's what the eddies of the cauldron decided. And Feyre goes, I don't believe in fate, nor do I believe in some ridiculous cauldron. Take me to her. And it says, Alice studied me for a moment before her eyes softened. As you wish. And part of me is like, what did Alice see in that moment?
I'm sure she saw the fierceness and like the love that she had. And it's like, she's not going to quit. Like, even if you don't take her, she is going to get there somehow. Yes. So it's like, take her and like, let her just do this.
Right. Alice let her decide.
I know. Come on.
Anyway, I'm just hung up on that point right now for some reason. But anyway, just like such an emotional few chapters.
Yeah.
This whole section.
What? That was 28 through 32.
Yes. 28 through 32. All of the feels.
Yes.
Next week is chapters 33 through 36.
Okay.
And we only have 3 more episodes left.
Oh, wow.
Until we're done with this book. So lots of exciting things to come as it wraps up.
Yes.
So once again, let us know what you think. Talk to us on socials, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to A Court of Fairies and Fangirls, a Sarah J. Maas fan podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And let us know what you think. Jump in on the conversation. We look forward to chatting with you more next week. Bye-bye.